Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big News Wednesdays. So big, we decided, you know, we're gonna go classic, we're gonna go old school, we're gonna bring back sort of the father of Big News Wednesdays, Jayar Jackson. Jayar, how's it going?
I discovered, I wasn't paying close attention, but I did discover while I was gone, the news was slightly smaller on Wednesdays. I have to say, I mean, you know,
yeah, I mean, it was bulgy News Wednesday, but not like big, like objectively big. It's like swelling News Wednesday. It's like maybe it'll get there. But anyway, we're very glad to have you back. You recently took a little trip.
Yeah.
Are you feeling? What is it? Is it like rested, tanned, and ready, or something like that? What's that political
I didn't know there was a term, but well, considering I was in Baton Rouge, it's more like rested, sweaty, and humid. Is what I felt for the whole time.
And bitten by mosquitoes.
It was good, but it was also really good food as well. I mean, you can't stop anywhere without eating, without being offered a plate, without then having to take a plate with you, because then there's another plate at the next place. And make sure you eat that plate before you eat the third plate. So yeah.
So it's not just Big News Wednesday, but it might be Big JR Wednesday.
I remember it was a humble brag when I lost weight during the pandemic. Apparently that's over.
Yeah, I had a brief period where I was doing pretty good. And now we're moving on. Anyway, just rolling down that slope towards death. But anyway, thank you everybody for being here. I can see in the chat that people are very excited to see you. There's also a lot of call to see Sprocket, but we're glad to have you back. We're glad to have all of you back too. It's been a while, I haven't seen you since yesterday. So thank you for being here. You know the drill. We're gonna talk about a bunch of news for about 90 minutes. And along the way, we're gonna be responding to your questions, comments, concerns, super chats, tweets, Twitters, all of that. So feel free to send those. And before that though, I would like it if you would ante up for the show by hitting the like button, sharing the stream, and letting people know that we're active, because we're gonna be covering some pretty important stuff here and we want people to know about it. So if you could do that, that would be great. And that said, JR, you ready to do this thing?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump right into this video.
The time is long overdue for Congress to reassert its constitutional role in matters of war and peace.
So that is Bernie Sanders, who, along with Senators Chris Murphy and Mike Lee as well, so it is bipartisan, putting forward a bill that aims to fairly fundamentally reshape the relationship between the Senate and the presidency when it comes to matters of war in a number of different areas. So is this gonna pass? I mean, it's 2021, so let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it is important, it is big. So let me give you some of the details. Proposed legislation would cut off funding for military actions not explicitly authorized by Congress. It would also tighten the definition of hostilities under the War Powers Resolution to cover not just cases of military forces on the ground, but troops deployed irrespective of the domain. I believe there they mean the domains of air and water. No word yet on fire or heart. But anyway, this is one of the ways they get around it. We don't have soldiers, we just have freaking jets and boats, man. So it only took us a few decades. They're starting to catch up to that. And by the way, hostilities not approved by Congress would be required to end after 20 days rather than the current 60 days, which is good, cutting the amount of time under the War Powers Act. But it's only as good as the willingness of the Senate to actually remember that the War Powers Act exists. That said, there's a lot more here covering a lot of different areas. But Jayar Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I mean, nobody can ever really be against the possibility or the hope or the try to get something done when it comes to reining in some of the powers that executives have had when it comes to just going off to war. Because we'll hear about it all the time. We may hear about another strike that happened. We're not really sure who approved it or to what level something like this has to be approved. Oh, well, that's just a strike that we're doing there because we're already there fighting and we're getting pushed back. Oh, I mean, there's some human rights violations happening there. Not many Americans, I don't think, can keep up with that level, with those levels of whether or not we have these kinds of approvals. And so the pushback coming to say like your Congress people and your senators or even the president, I think gets a little muted because no one really fully knows where those things can break down. And maybe something like this gives like some concrete steps and parameters and limitations that people know are established and exist. So when we hear about it, we just know. There's certain things about levels of executive power and everything that we just know about. We know about levels of judicial powers that we just know about. When it comes to War Powers Acts, these things have to be like put in place and known as a standard in America. Maybe this will get us there.
Yeah, I definitely think changing this relationship is important, and it does go wide. But mainly, I almost see it as like kind of like the filibuster. The filibuster is, as long as it's here, there's cover for a lot of people to be like, well, what are you gonna do? You know,
right.
Like there's like totally stuff I'd like to do that you would love. It's very popular, I can tell, but I can't do it because I got the filibuster. This is like, I know that like technically we're supposed to be in charge of this war stuff and making sure that it works the right way, but like I don't want to get criticized or anything. So let's just leave it to the president. And largely I'm okay with it anyway, because no matter what happens, if it goes well, if it goes poorly, we give money to the people who give money to me. So yeah, let's avoid that cover. I don't need a bunch of umbrellas protecting you from public oversight and things like that. But that said, we're gonna give you more details. First though, a little bit more of the burn dragon.
I believe that we have become far too comfortable with the United States engaging in military interventions all over the world, with barely any debate in Congress or in the public about the costs and potential unintended consequences of those interventions. But over many years and under administrations of both parties, Congress has allowed its oversight authority to wane and executive power to expand. This legislation is an important step forward toward reasserting Congress's constitutional powers.
And sort of expand them as well. So let's go through a few different ways that would work. So first of all, the measure would sunset 180 days after enactment all existing AUMFs, including the 2001 AUMF passed in the wake of the September 11th attacks, and upon which every consecutive administration, both Republican as well as Democrat, has leaned to justify military actions in regions around the world. So what that means is we actually have to have a conversation. Like as a country, you can't just keep saying, hey, well, a billion years ago, while everyone was scared out of their minds, we said that we were gonna do a thing. So I guess as long as I can tie whatever I wanna do to that, we're cool. No, we're gonna cancel all of those. And if you want a replacement, if you feel like it's that important, then actually make the case. To me, again, kind of a connection to the filibuster, if you think it's so important to stop something, then actually make the case to the American people. Can we as a country actually talk? Not like regular people, that's not productive, but can we at least know what they're going to do? And so this could potentially get us there. But also, instead of the current default approval of arms sales, barring a passage of a resolution of disapproval by veto-proof majorities of the House and the Senate, the proposal directs Congress to proactively approve certain sales topping $14 million, including those of air-to-ground munitions. So basically, before, you had to do all this special stuff to be involved in the arms sales. You could, in theory, if you really made a big stink about it, and generally, again, these are cowardly senators, so they don't want to be involved in it, they kind of approve of it anyway. In this case, they actually have to proactively approve those sales, which by the way, they probably will, but at least we'll know about it. They'll have to go on the record as approving of these sales and thus be at least somewhat responsible for what is done by those weapons, with those weapons.
Yeah, there'll be more things on their record, but they actually have to do to stand up and say whether they support or don't support them. Because previous to this, I'm not sure if you're getting this, but previous to this, it would just be allowed, and therefore any kinds of voting or anything to stop it. The voting then comes to stop just regular flow of these kinds of sales. It's just a regularity, just a normal thing that we do. So in order to stop this flow of constant sales wherever hell an executive wants to sell these things, then Congress has to then come up with some way to step in and do it that way rather than approve it in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, just be involved. They still, I think, mostly ironically refer to the Senate as the greatest deliberative body in world history or whatever. All they do is avoid having to deliberate. The only deliberate thing about them is they're passing the buck, effectively. So this would, at least in an area that some might say is important, like the wars we engage in, they might actually have to engage in those conversations.
Yeah.
Finally, one more detail. The legislation would further restrain executive national security powers by requiring congressional approval of an emergency declaration within 30 days. Such emergencies wouldn't be allowed to exceed 5 years, with annual congressional renewals needed. The legislation would also limit the range of emergency powers the president could tap. So this goes a bit broader than just foreign wars into trying to declare these national emergencies to accomplish other goals that you have that you might not want to try to accomplish via legislation. Now that said, I like this in a lot of different areas. I like that it is bipartisan because for some reason that's important in terms of the way these things are presented. It's not really shocking while Mike Lee is a literal troglodyte. In these areas, he has been good sometimes, usually working with people like Bernie Sanders, like Chris Murphy, sometimes with an assist by people like Ro Khanna in the House. So he's good in this area. That said, having limits on the time and having it to be like reauthorized and stuff like that, that does give us what we've been talking about, a chance to look at what's happening. It doesn't necessarily change what will happen though. And maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe every bill doesn't have to do everything, but it is entirely possible that you could do all of this and we could still be engaged in effectively forever wars. They would just be occasional forever wars we check in on. We could still be selling arms to all sorts of different regimes around the world. We would just have a little bit more information on it. This doesn't like drastically slash the military budget or anything like that, or prohibit certain types of foreign engagements altogether. So this is not like a Green New Deal for the US military or anything like that. But that said, it is something. It's good to have people like Bernie Sanders focusing on it.
It's a chance for a little bit of oversight when it comes to things like this. And again, for people to know exactly what's happening. So the check-ins, yes, they could be repetitive or also end up with the same conclusions, but at least someone has put a name to it. And as you mentioned, I think many of these legislators don't want to have their name attached to something that could potentially be hanging around their neck come election time. Now, potentially what it also gives a chance for is organizations and groups and activists that are against these forever wars, they get a chance to then point out who's voting on what, where they supported things and why they did. Because there isn't really much accountability for this, for these folks in any other realm. But this at least gives an opportunity for those groups to point out where the accountability is for folks. And by the way,
that's true.
Maybe it's helpful when it comes to just voting here. The fact that Biden's in office right now, and we're talking about the executive in general. And as Bernie Sanders pointed out, it doesn't matter who's the president. It continues to happen the same way every time. So we know how Republicans a lot of times will give free carte blanche to any Republican president that's in office and let him do whatever the hell he wants. But then when a Democrat's in office, they're like, oh my God, you see what he's doing. Now, at least here, you have to point out that they're doing it every time, but maybe they'll be more open to passing this now because there's a Democrat in office, and we definitely can't say we're okay with the wars being fought endlessly when a Democrat's in office, even though both do it.
Yeah, we can't say it, but we can say nothing. We can just forget about it for a few years.
Now they got to vote
in a lot of different areas. And Bernie's making that a little bit more difficult for them here, as well as Chris Murphy, Mike Lee, and there's people in the House that are working on a House version of it as well. So thank you to them as well. That said, we are going to take our first break, so don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to check in on a video that got a lot of people fired up yesterday. Dr. Fauci tangling with Rand Paul, which I had a feeling Jayar would be into, and is it against the law for me to ask if you've been vaccinated? We're gonna get a little less than the law thanks to Congresswoman Marjorie Greene after this. Welcome back, everyone. More news is coming, but before we give you the news, I did want to let you know that as always, after our program, you got Indisputable coming up. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Benjamin Dixon, that is an amazing team up right there. There'll be a debate with John Hart, and all of this is coming up at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time at youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. Go check it out. You probably already do. It's doing amazingly, and nobody deserves it more than Dr. Rashad Ritchie and his amazing team.
I don't want to step on Indisputable's potential announcement, but there's this guy who's usually called the Dread Dragon who's going to be on Indisputable on Monday. I mean, maybe. Don't hold me to it, but maybe.
Are we breaking news right now? Are we breaking news? Anyway.
I've been emailing Dr. Ritchie incessantly. Like, so when am I going to be on? So when am I going to be on? Yeah.
He finally broke. Okay. Well, that said, why don't we jump into some more news? Yesterday, Rand Paul once again decided to go a couple rounds with Dr. Fauci. It is like his thing in life to just try to get Dr. Fauci in trouble, this time over so-called gain of function research, something that admittedly I don't understand very well, which puts me in good company with Rand Paul, who knows it no better than I do. But here is the interaction he had yesterday with Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, Do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
Okay, so I don't know Dr. Fauci. I don't know a lot about Dr. Fauci, but one thing I know about Dr. Fauci is that he is done with Rand Paul. Like, he was ready to be salty with Rand Paul. Like, he came into the room already mad at Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Which, Jayar, I have to admit, I get. Rand Paul is the worst.
Well, this has been an ongoing thing, right? This has become Rand Paul's bread and butter. This is his claim to potential, I guess, campaign donations or support based off of the crazed Trumpers level. So he's doing all these talking point things and he's focusing on Fauci because, you know, there's a new boogeyman. There's always a boogeyman. If you can discover the new boogeyman, especially one that the former president didn't like that actually worked with him, oh man, this is gold. These guys, and we talked about Eric Swalwell the other day, mentioned how Ted Cruz approaches legislating like it's a WWE thing, right? You saw this. And so they're performing. Their only objective is getting reelected. You can't get reelected unless you somehow made a name for yourself as being this person that needs to get elected, not based off of policy. Oh my God. If you did things based off of policy, people might actually ask you questions. You'd have to back up your thoughts and stances with some kind of real legislation. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to have fights with Dr. Fauci while people go, F Dr. Fauci, selling T-shirts. What? Ron DeSantis is selling T-shirts on Dr. Fauci. This is a game. It's a total game. It doesn't have to make sense. And once you have people that have your undivided attention, that have no critical thinking, you can continue to get in the factual world, get slammed every time you have these fights with Fauci. But it doesn't matter as long as you keep going, well, what about this, Dr. Fauci? You go right past the fact that was just given because no one is listening to those facts. This is just the game being played.
This is so that like some conspiracy theorists online who already believe whatever. I don't even know what they believe about this, but they already believe that it's totally true. They just want to see, well, Rand Paul, I don't even know if they want to see Rand Paul talk about this, but Rand Paul desperately wants them to see him talking about this because he wants the cred. In any event, let's get to the substance of this. So, gain of function research, the topic that they're talking about, and we'll have more from them in a second, is the process of altering a pathogen to make it more transmissible in order to better predict emerging diseases. Fauci denied in previous Senate testimony that the NIH had directly funded the research at a lab in Wuhan, China, that has come under intense scrutiny as a possible source of the virus. The director of the NIH, Francis Collins, in a statement given earlier this year, warning of misinformation, said, quote, neither NIH nor NIAID have ever approved any grant that would have supported gain of function research on coronaviruses that would have increased their transmissibility or lethality for humans. So he believes that he has found a place where Fauci has lied. He doesn't demonstrate that. He doesn't demonstrate either what the lie is or that he understands what gain of function research is, which is sort of objectively annoying if you care about what's true. Also, personally, it seems to be annoying for Dr. Fauci, as you'll see in this clip.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Oh God. Anyway, Jayar, the important part about this, the thing that I think is most significant, and it's gonna pop up later on in the show as well, is that if you're Rand Paul, and if you believe that they funded this, and you believe that he's partly responsible for 4 million people dying, as he said, it wasn't in the clip, we clipped it out, but he says that Fauci's responsible for 4 million deaths, then it would seem that the point you're making is that this is serious. This is a big, dangerous deal. People have responsibility. Millions of people have died. But does anything else that Rand Paul says or do imply to you that he takes this seriously outside of as a gotcha against Dr. Fauci? Rand Paul would have you believe that he's not vaccinated. How serious is this thing if he doesn't even care to protect himself? He doesn't advocate for others to do it, even though he is a doctor himself. So is it serious or not? It can't just be serious to the extent that it possibly destroys the career of a government bureaucrat, and that's it. That doesn't seem serious at all. But if it is serious, if millions of lives are on the line, then do something about it. Act as if you care not just about those lives you use as a political attack, but the lives that might be lost in the next few months if people don't start to take this more seriously than they already are.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's serious. It's serious for his re-election campaign. That's the only thing it's serious for. That's all that this is. It's all that matters here. And by the way, so we talk about responsibility and the way coronavirus is handled. If you're concerned about whether or not gain of function was granted here to develop this virus that then ravaged the whole world, were you not concerned about Donald Trump's response to this virus that's ravaging the whole world as it was happening? Because he didn't care about that then. Responsibility is muted until you can blame it on the other party, because then that's how you get reelected. It's not about responsibility, it's not about protecting people, it's not about saving lives. It's about blaming the other folks. Before that, this is not a big deal, as you mentioned. It's a big deal once we can blame it on someone else. It's just the way that they approach these things. And by the way, that was, you talked about the real parts of this. I want to talk a couple seconds about the unreal parts of this, not important parts of this, that I liked. Dr. Fauci totally went to grandpa mode 2 times. First clip, he gave him the head nod. And I just want you to know, once grandpa is scolding you, it's like, or grandma too, hey. And the second was, you were the one that's like.
That to me actually read a little bit like, I don't know if you saw the Fauci ouchie video of Lauren Boebert, where she's like doing this all the time.
No,
it felt a little bit like that from Dr. Fauci, but
once he gets moving, man.
I know he gets a little bit salty. Like, this dude's been in the public eye. He's starting to like it, I guess. Anyway, now you're gonna show it to us. He gets mad. He is a man. I cannot see that guy without thinking of one of the characters from The Burbs, that 80s movie. Have people watched The Burbs? Have people forgotten The Burbs?
I kind of did. I remember. It was a good movie.
It was a good movie. You should watch it. Tom Hanks. Yeah. It's not bad. Corey Feldman. Anyway, with that, why don't we move into a slightly different topic? Here at the Damage Report, we've been focusing over the past few weeks, trying to get prominent right-wingers to actually say whether they've been vaccinated or not, because we believe that there are lives on the line, the lives of people who trust and look up to people like Marjorie Greene or Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity. Apparently, though, we have been inadvertently breaking the law multiple times, or so Congresswoman Marjorie Greene would have you believe, as you'll see in this clip.
Aaron Navarro, CBS News. Whip Scalise said today he got vaccinated, citing this Delta variant that's going around, and said he's confident that it's safe and effective. 2 questions. Have you yourself gotten vaccinated, and do you disagree with the Republican whip?
Well, your first question is a violation of my HIPAA rights. You see, with HIPAA rights, we don't have to reveal our medical records, and that also involves our vaccine records.
So look, spoiler alert, we're gonna do a fact check here. It's not true. We'll give you the details, but it's just, she just says it like, that's actually a violation of my HIPAA rights. Just like, but that's not true. It's annoying to me that the reporter doesn't immediately jump in and correct her. He doesn't. He moves on. But that said, should he have to? Like, we're gonna do the fact check right now. But I want you to know that this is not like the first time that she said this, and thus the first time it's being fact checked. We have been through this over and over and over for months now. To the extent that she knows anything, she knows that this is not what HIPAA is actually about. But what is HIPAA about? Well, here is what it is. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, is a law that prevents healthcare professionals from sharing private health information without the patient's permission. The law has no bearing on who can ask or answer questions about health status outside a healthcare setting. Alan Meisel, a professor of law and bioethics at the University of Pittsburgh, says it in no way prohibits business owners and other individuals from asking people if they've been vaccinated. In fact, it doesn't even prohibit healthcare entities mentioned above from asking people if they've been vaccinated. She would have you believe that doctors can't ask if you've been vaccinated because HIPAA. That's not how it works at all. And if it did work that way, one would imagine that a free speech warrior like Marjorie Greene would have a bit of an issue with the government telling you literally what questions you can or can't ask. But thankfully, we're dodging a bullet here. That's not actually what HIPAA's about at all.
You're allowed to have free reign in this arena of senselessness and cluelessness because the people you're speaking to are senseless and clueless. So you can say things that don't make any sense. You can get debunked. You can say it again after you get debunked, and you can still be standing there without people going, why is she still saying this? Because the people that she's speaking to that are listening are like, yeah, that's right, HIPAA violation. They stop right there. Now, the problem also is with lazy politicians, which we've increasingly got more and more of because it's all based in emotions and anger and opposition to the other side. As we're at this point, they've gotten so lazy, they don't have any thought processes on their principles or legislation or things that can move the country forward. They don't need to. And at the same time, reporters and interviewers or whoever in these press pools, I get it's a tough job, so I'm trying not to come too hard on them because it's easy to say, oh, this is what I would have asked. But in the moment, maybe you would have had an issue. But anyway, I'm gonna go for it anyway. At least have a thought of a follow-up question. So if you ask a sitting politician who's getting all kinds of headlines for her opinions on things, at least consider what she might say and then have a follow-up question prepared. So if she says, oh, that's a violation of my HIPAA rights, because we've heard it before, at least go, do you understand the HIPAA rights? Ask her, because it's a real legitimate question. Like, it's just not a general curiosity. Ask her, oh, so by the way, you talked about how Steve Scalise decided to get the vaccine because of the Delta variant. And I asked you if you disagree with him. And all you said was, well, all I'm talking about is whether or not people have the right to do it. I'm not saying that you don't, that vaccines and things don't work. I'm just saying you have the right. Well, again, you disagree with Steve Scalise. Like, we don't get to these points again. You just go around in this roundabout merry-go-round.
Yeah, I wouldn't even ask. I would have had the reporter say, well, actually, HIPAA just stops a healthcare provider from giving your private health information to someone else. It has nothing to do with someone asking you a question. But and you're not gonna get her because she's just a brick wall of, as I said online, unentitled entitlement and willful ignorance. But anyway, people have had fun with this. Some people have had fun with similar claims that she's making. USA Today had to debunk a similar claim last summer when mask opponents said that because of HIPAA, they don't have to wear masks, which that's not even about questions anymore. You're not even in the ballpark. But other people have decided that pleading the HIPAA is kind of a convenient way to get out of pretty much anything, with Nikki McCann Ramirez saying, parents, are you high? Me, smartly. This is a violation of my HIPAA rights. If my wife ever asks how much I've spent recently on Etsy fantasy mask printouts or map printouts, I'm gonna say it's a HIPAA violation. But I thought Daisy's Nice tweeted, Tupac bringing up sickle cell on Hit 'Em Up was one of hip hop's earliest HIPAA violations. That is pretty good.
He directly asked. He goes, don't one of y'all have sickle cell or something? He asked.
That's true.
Asked the question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as he broke the law. If he ever pops up again, he might be in violation of something. But anyway, we had a poll yesterday. I'm gonna ask a poll right now. I'm posting my first ever live poll on YouTube. Who has the most pathetic excuse to not have to reveal their vaccination status? So is it Tucker Carlson turning it around and asking incredibly personal sexual questions of a female reporter? Is it Sean Hannity saying, I was gonna tell you, but then you demanded to know, so I'm not gonna? Or is it Marjorie Greene pleading the HIPAA? That is now up on our YouTube channel. But we also asked you which of the Fox personalities will reveal their vaccination status first. So let's bring up the results of that. You had Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham. And I don't know exactly why, but overwhelmingly people thought Sean Hannity was the most likely, getting 80% of the vote. They think he'll confirm that he's vaccinated. Laura Ingraham got 13.5%, Tucker Carlson just 6.5%. I don't think he will ever do it. I don't think that any of them will, but I kind of agree. I think that Hannity's probably the most likely.
Well, he's the one who's come out of those three the most and said that he believes in vaccine science. And he went that far. Oh my God, he went there.
Yeah. So far, by the way, on the YouTube poll, who has the most pathetic excuse? Tucker Carlson is, oh no, wait. he was leading, but now Marjorie Greene's starting to catch up. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that one.
Don't call it a comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. If you call it a comeback, that is a violation of my HIPAA rights. Anyway, really fast, I want to give you an update on this. Marjorie Greene was recently suspended for 12 hours from Twitter. It was a brief suspension. She wasn't banned or anything. And the reason that she was even suspended was that she spread misinformation about COVID. It's not the first time that she's done that. And she doesn't even get suspended every time she does it. But she was suspended briefly. She's not happy about it, but she's also not changing her behavior as a result of it, as she will describe.
Should people sue Twitter because they're banning my voice? You see, it's a hypocrisy. And these are the things that we can't allow to stand. I will not stop speaking. I will not stop tweeting. I will not stop posting. I will not stop asking questions. Because if you have members of Congress that aren't asking questions, then I don't know what kind of country we're going to have.
Oh, that end. She's like trying to make a point and trying to make it broader than just her on Twitter, but she can't do it. It's just, that was pathetic. By the way, you want to know someone who's flamed out while trying to make a profound point? I've done it a time or two. I know what it looked like, and that's what that was. That didn't go anywhere but down. But more importantly, that was literally, I'm gonna post through it as a defense for her violations of the Twitter terms of service. What do you think, Jayar?
If you're a congressperson, what kind of Congress people do we have if they're not asking questions, tweeting and posting on Facebook? We have Congress people who are doing their jobs, actually, if they're not doing that constantly. So you're telling me before Twitter and Facebook and Instagram popped up, Congress people just had nothing to do? Because that's all you just said you do. Tweet, and post, talk about it, ask questions. Ask questions to who? Who you asking questions to?
What question?
The experts?
What question are you asking? You weren't, that's not why you were banned. You made statements about COVID that were untrue. And again, as we've been asking day after day on the damage report, what question are you asking? I will answer it. I just answered your thing about HIPAA that you were wrong about. Please ask a specific question and we will answer, but you won't. You don't have any questions, you got nothing.
There's nothing, it's just, it's stupidity and it's constant. And then again, it's the emotional push. It's, I'm not gonna stop doing that. They're gonna stop me. It's like this, again, why do I care what happens on your Twitter account? What have you done since you've been elected to help the American people outside make a big spectacle of yourself to take more money from those same people that for some reason voted for you?
Yeah, the issue, like her ideology is as barren as her desk, as Brett pointed out, tweeting, who the F has a desk with nothing on it? Which, look, to be clear, I zoomed in. There is what looks like a bottle of hand sanitizer, which, hey, are you starting to believe all these Jewish conspiracies about germs, Marjorie Greene? But anyway, there's a bottle of water and a book. It's probably the Bible. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that it's a Bible, but that is supposedly her actual desk. Does that look like a desk that people are working at? It doesn't to me. But I would also like to add, in the same way that we just criticized Rand Paul, if you bring up that tweet again, you'll see that this little impromptu press conference that she did has the lie of Fauci that she's been talking about for a long time, which is, I don't recommend that you wear a mask. And she says Fauci lied, people died. She has been saying this for a full year now. And so I will go 1/2 step further along the line that the argument that she seems to be making. So what you're saying is that he lied in saying that you don't have to wear a mask. So he was wrong, right? So what should we then do? Should we wear masks maybe? Because again, like Rand Paul, it seems that you're implying that he wasn't taking it seriously enough. Ergo, we should take it seriously. Protect our lives. Fauci lied, people died. Well, do you want more people to die or no? You seem to be implying no, but that's where it stops. There's nothing after that. It's like the event horizon of a black hole. I don't know what your point is.
She doesn't either. Anyway. I do want to challenge, my last thought on this. I do want to challenge Brett's tweet there about the who has a desk with nothing on it. I did notice behind her is that sign, as you point out, Fauci lied, people died. Now again, I don't know if that counts as something on the desk or just her motif, but I'm currently, I've reached out to Dr. Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs, and he's currently making me a sign that says, Mitch McConnell, blocking all legislation for Democratic agendas. Wait, I may have to shorten that. We're working on it. But the point is I have something in the works.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro.
100%. Sorry. Jesus. Okay, so the end result of the poll, who has the most pathetic excuse to not reveal their vaccination status, it'll be up for a while. But right now, Tucker Carlson is still winning by 5% over Marjorie Greene. We'll see how it goes in the future. That said, we do have more news coming. We do have to take a break though, so we'll be back in just a few. Why don't we jump back into the news? Kyrsten Sinema has taken an interesting road since she was elected, pulling a bunch of moves that seem designed to stop the Democrats from accomplishing anything or even making good on her own campaign promises, such as supporting a raise to the minimum wage. She has turned against that, and it appears that as well as her position on the filibuster, her refusal to reform it, let alone eliminate it, might be hurting her and might open her up to a primary challenge. There's a new poll of Arizona voters, likely Arizona voters, done by Data for Progress, showing a number of interesting things, including that only 22% of Arizona Democratic primary voters say they would support her reelection in 2024 if she maintains her hardline stance on the filibuster. So 66% say that if given the chance in any sort of primary before 2024, they would vote for a different candidate. So overwhelmingly, it's not just that they don't like her position on that, but it seems like it is directly translating into opposition to her being reelected, Jayar.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out as she was tumbling down this hill and that she's gonna die on, that she decided to go this route, this hardcore. Joe Manchin was doing it too because of the kind of state he's from, and he feels secure in the fact that he can basically be a Republican, work that direction. But I feel like Arizona isn't that clear cut, and I was confused by it. It's like, so the thumbs down and the performative stuff and tapping Mitch McConnell on the shoulder and be like, "Do you like what I did, bro?" All that stuff just seemed like it was setting yourself up for too much attention. Again, as I said earlier when talking about Rand Paul, all these politicians are playing a game just to get reelected. So they're angling themselves just for another reelection. And this didn't seem like a very good play. And it seems to be, falling apart in front of her right now. So I'm not sure what the next step is. Maybe flip it back, pull a Sean Hannity and say, "Oh no, I'm sorry. What all I said, I didn't really mean. The whole time what I meant was, once Republicans block us for a year and a half, then I'm going to go back on the filibuster." We'll
see. I mean, look, there's been a lot of different attempts to explain what she's doing, and some of them are in the area of what you said, that it's sort of pragmatic. It's Arizona. She's trying to show that she is an independent or that she respects, the will of Republicans there. Although again, the state chose a Democrat, so you'd think you'd err in that direction. Now there seems to be some evidence that if that were her objective, to get Republicans and moderates to like her, that might be working. We'll turn to that in a moment. But I want to make clear before we get to that I don't believe that at all. I think that she is stopping progress because she doesn't want progress in these areas. She doesn't want a higher minimum wage. She doesn't want the filibuster to go away because then a bunch of other things that she doesn't want to happen might happen. She is not delivering for rando Republicans living in Phoenix. She's delivering for corporations all over the country that are handing her campaign dollars. That's my view. That said, how do different groups view her? Sinema is viewed favorably by just 42% of Democrats, with 39% viewing her unfavorably. Mark Kelly, the other senator who was elected narrowly last fall, is at 75% favorability. So significantly more popular. And oddly enough, he's not the one, that's like doing all these weird machinations to appeal to Republicans. So at least in terms of Democrats, her stance isn't helping her. Only among Republican voters did Sinema score better approval marks than either Joe Biden or Mark Kelly. So
now you're cornered.
It seems to be working, Jayar, amongst Republicans.
Yeah, but see, now you're cornered though. Now you're appealing to just some Republicans. So you either have to then declare that you've gone Republican, which I'm not sure what the explanation can be for that. Or you start going with, I think what a lot of Republicans do, it looks like it's what Marjorie Greene likes to do, is look at how much they hate me, to try and get popularity off of your opposition. But your opposition is now the Democratic voters that you need to get into office. This puzzle is not coming together for me. Because again, like I said, either you do the work for the people and the people love you, get reelected, or you do the work against the people, but then you're serving your corporate overlords and you're getting money, and then you have that advantage. All these things, I'm not sure if they're going to match up well for her. I would love to know what her campaign strategy is going to be.
We'll see. Well, look, I hope that there's a vigorous primary, because the poll also shows that people want a primary. Democrats, 80% say they will definitely vote in a statewide Democratic primary election for the US Senate if it happens. Well, I mean, it will happen, but I'm saying if it's contested, that would be even better. So they're very excited for that. And in terms of her stances, it doesn't seem like it's gonna help her as long as people know about it. Things like passing the PRO Act has 65% support, raising the minimum wage has 59%, restoring the talking filibuster at least is 54%. And by the way, I think that those numbers are regrettably low, all of them. I think that the idea that, and I believe that's not just Democrats, I believe that includes Republicans. So bear that in mind. A lot of Republicans are gonna be opposed to all of that, but I would like it to be stronger. Like, raise the minimum wage should be more popular. But again, we are working to overcome decades of propaganda, demonizing anything being done by the government to benefit those who are struggling the most. So this is unfortunately one of the continuing casualties of that. It does still have majority support, but it's not as strong as I would like, unfortunately. And that to some extent helps out someone like Sinema.
It's an offshoot of our capitalistic society. If you put everyone against each other, then there's no way we can accept that everyone should get the same level of support, financial, from the country that we've provided with this financial support, because we're too busy thinking the next guy's gonna get it and I won't. So we can't have that.
And by the way, while I'm being disappointed by numbers, let's also turn to that 42% of Democrats that support her. That's too high. That is simply too. I mean, it's gone down a bunch, which is good. It means that people are paying attention to what's being done, and they are translating their policy preferences into an accurate evaluation, an evolving evaluation of a politician. That's good, but it's still too high. And I don't know, of the 42% that remain, how many of them like her moves or how many just don't know. And so look, if you're involved in some sort of primary challenge, or you want to get that going, people need to know about this stuff. Like, if they like her thumbs down to raise the minimum wage, that's fine. But let's make sure that they actually know, so they can actually evaluate it.
100%, because that's the thing. It's gonna be plenty of Democratic voters that'll go with the establishment line and say, well, we can't have a Republican in there, can we? That's what they're banking on half the time. Like, oh, at least they're gonna be against any Republican, so let's vote in this Democratic Republican.
Yeah, essentially. Okay, I'm gonna be closing down the YouTube. I guess I'll keep it running, but it looks like Tucker is gonna win. We're at close to 1,000 votes, and he's still at 50%. 7% think that Hannity's the most pathetic. To be clear though, they're all pathetic, okay, in their own way. Really fast, let me let you know though about the fact that you might be watching right now on the members app. You might be watching on YouTube, you might be watching on Twitch, but did you know that we're also available as a podcast? It could be a very convenient way to consume the show on the go. For years, that was how I listened to the Young Turks, actually, was at the gym or while I was driving, I would listen to the audio podcast. So that is available. You can listen to us on the Acast app, and we're gonna have more news coming about some partnerships we're doing with Acast in the future, as well as other places wherever you get your podcasts. You can do that too. Walking around the supermarket or something like that, you don't want people to bother you, put in your headphones, listen to Damage Report. That's what I do. I'm antisocial. Be antisocial with me, but like with a distance. So anyway, that's available too. That said, why don't we get into our last story? There have been increasing number of tense, even violent confrontations between flyers and gate attendants, as well as flight attendants. And we unfortunately have another one of those. A Karen who wanted to fly and flew too close to the sun of her own outrage at everything that's going on. So take a look at this video, which has been going viral recently on TikTok.
First of all. Second of all, you called my employee a bitch. Completely uncalled for, inappropriate, you're not gonna travel. We don't tolerate that crap with us at all. So you can find another courier to fly. I'd suggest Spirit.
Nope. Listen, can I just first
If you acted appropriate and you weren't disrespectful, then I would let you travel. But unfortunately, you called my employee a bitch. Did you call my employee a bitch? You didn't.
I was standing there. No, I did not.
You didn't. So the other people have heard you say it as well. Don't count. Yeah, she also had 2 children. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, don't lie.
I mean, the thing that I find perhaps most surprising about that, Jayar, was that I don't know exactly what, if that's a manager or something like that, but was really sticking up for the original employee that we don't see in the video that Flying Karen had apparently attacked and verbally abused. And I'm just sort of used to people not sticking with or defending their employees. So that was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's a level of this privilege that is blinding for folks. You're about to fly, bro. Again, TSA is coming after 9/11 attacks in 01, right? And then all this keeps happening where we've changed the way we fly, and it's gotten way more like restrictive and serious, and don't say this one thing and don't worry, you gotta worry about that. And for some reason, COVID came along and people got relaxed with what they do when they're about to fly. Bro, this is still a serious situation. So if you fly and get to screaming at people and yelling at this flight attendant, attacking someone else and trying to open an emergency hatch, where did people start losing their minds over this? Suddenly everything just went out the window and we're gonna go this route? But she seems surprised that there's some kind of accountability. So now they turn to, oh no, I didn't. I mean, there's the panic in her voice, she didn't realize. So if you wanna get kicked off of flights, if you wanna have fights with flight attendants, if you wanna call people names and to make sure that they know that you're violating my rights, hey, be prepared to lose your $500 ticket. Be prepared to pay that as your reason for having these thought processes. I was gonna get kicked off a flight one time. My wife was worried once. This is years ago, only because my kid was like 2. There's this stupid rule that says, hey, they have to be in this seat where the belt is all messed up. The kid was falling apart because of pressure. And I said, can you let me hold him? He's small. And it was an issue. And she was like, you're gonna get us kicked off. I was like, you know what? This one I'm willing to get kicked off for because this is dangerous to the kid.
Sure.
I'm willing to lose that money, right? But if you're just trying to complain over a mask, okay, is your lack of mask wearing worth your $500 you're gonna lose on this ticket? Just assess the situation before you do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the hill you were willing to die on is a little bit different than just apparently something. What do you think this is about? It's about a mask dispute. She didn't want to wear a mask or whatever. And she was so angry about it that she called an employee a bitch. That is, am I a weirdo? Am I crazy? That is 10 out of 10. I'm now losing it territory to call an employee something like that. And then to then think that the excuse you can give is, well, but I have kids. Okay, then you should be a better role model.
What does that mean?
That's not an excuse. And as he pointed out, so did the woman you called a bitch, by the way. So those cancel out. So now we're back to basic human decency. Like, you're going on a flight, man. Just put on your mask and finish your travel. I understand it's stressful, but you don't have to make it worse for everyone. And I don't know what it is. Either maybe the mask thing is a bigger part of it, but it's not like people haven't been horrendous to flight attendants and gate agents for a long time. I remember just briefly, I wanted to get on a flight in Texas, and we were waiting for the flight. It was delayed or whatever, and there was a huge pack of people that were pushed up on the gate. And the gate agent is saying, hey, everybody, they're right up on it. Hey, everybody, we can't fly until you back away. Like the distance to this, that's where the first person was that she was talking to. They're looking her in the eyes, another human saying, I need you to back up. And they're like, I'm here now. Like, what is wrong with people? We're part of a society. You have to move, but people won't. And then when you add on top of that, all the stuff about COVID and everything, we don't have it in us as a species to be sociable, unfortunately. We're done. I think that's the end of humanity, is a combination of flying and COVID. So anyway, thankfully nobody got attacked. And maybe she did go and fly on Spirit, which is, as a person who's flown Spirit many times, its own punishment. So anyway.
It is.
Yes. Okay, everybody, we are regrettably out of time for our first hour, but we are gonna have a lot more news coming in the form of a massive, supersized meanwhile, and we're gonna be giving you news from around the world. News about climate change, news about, hey, some good news, what do you know? As well as news about the Olympics. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you didn't catch it, these are amazing. Mini Morpho did some great work for these. I saw people talking about it in Twitch, so definitely go check out Mini Morpho on Instagram and on Twitch. You can find those out. That said, more news is coming to you on YouTube and Twitch after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.